Russian missiles got dangerously close to Ukraine's nuclear plants. Russian ballistic missiles have flown within 10 kilometers of Ukraine's nuclear reactors, according to the head of Ukraine's nuclear operations. Close enough to hit the stations in a matter of seconds. Here's more in this report.
These power station workers are training for something that used to be a rare emergency and that's now become routine because of Russia's attacks on Ukraine's energy system. Their job is to reduce this power station's output in a matter of minutes to try and avoid disbalancing the whole country's energy grid. This is a one-to-one copy of the real control room on the same site, here at the Khmelnytsky nuclear power plant. Everyone taking part in these exercises works in the real control room and has to deal with the fallout from Russia's strikes on the grid.
Before the war, this kind of incident almost never happened. It all started after Russia's invasion and the outages that caused to the grid. We have very little time to react. If the dispatchers tell us to reduce our output to 75%, we can do that in half an hour. If we lose power from outside and have to disconnect from the grid, then that will take us a day to reconnect afterwards.
Russian strikes on the grid cause two distinct problems the engineers here have to respond to. Sometimes Ukraine's energy system can't take all the electricity this power station produces because of damage to high voltage lines and substations that move power around the country. They have to reduce output to avoid overloading the system. Other times, though, they have the opposite problem: not enough power in the system. Nuclear power stations usually get electricity from outside to cool their reactors. When that's cut off, they have to fire up diesel generators for backup. Russia hasn't hit Ukraine's nuclear power plants in the way it's taken out conventional power stations, because contamination from a radiation leak would likely spread to Russia as well. But the worst-case scenario, a direct hit on one of these plants, isn't out of the question. 4 years into this war, all international attempts to exclude Ukraine's nuclear sites from the fighting have failed. Russian drones and missiles are not giving these facilities a wide berth. Back in 2025, a Russian Shahed drone damaged the steel structure which shields the site of the world's worst nuclear accident at Chernobyl. Last month, Ukraine's prosecutor general told Reuters that 35 Russian Kinzhal missiles had come within 20 kilometers of this power station in Khmelnytsky region. Given the speeds at which these missiles travel, that means they would only have to change course for a matter of seconds to hit the station, on purpose or by mistake. About half of those documented incidents saw Kinzhal missiles first fly over Chernobyl before flying over this plant. The Ukrainians say that has to be calculated intimidation. Dmitro is the senior engineer on shift in the control room.
I was on shift when an air alert came on. We were told that a missile attack was possible. We have instructions in case something like that happens. We know what needs to be done. We were lucky that time. We dodged that bullet. I really hope it never gets that far. Everyone knows what the consequences of a direct hit would be.
But even when there isn't an acute risk of a direct hit, the overall situation around the grid is so unstable that these engineers aren't allowed to leave the control room during their shifts, even briefly.
Everyone who's in charge of the reactor has to be in place all of the time. Before, we could take turns to go to the canteen, but as long as the war lasts, our food is brought over to us.
The one operational part of the facility we are allowed to visit is the turbine hall. Inside these giant machines, steam generated by the reactor spins the turbines and produces electricity. You don't need me to tell you that it is incredibly loud in here and it's also incredibly hot, but most Ukrainians are very glad that this station, this power plant, is in operation. Nuclear power plants like this one are basically the only thing keeping the lights on in Ukraine right now. They are the only bit of Ukraine's energy mix that Vladimir Putin can't destroy without endangering Russia. Last winter, when Russian strikes on Ukraine's conventional power stations were at their peak, nuclear power provided about 70% of the country's electricity. The head of Ukraine's state-controlled nuclear energy company tells us Russia was always going to be able to cause significant damage.
They know the system inside out. The grid was designed during Soviet times. They know how it works. They know where to hit to stop us getting our power out from nuclear power stations.
And how to terrify the people working at these plants. Kovtoniuk spells out quite how close Russian missiles have come. He says some missiles were recorded within 10 kilometers of this site in what he calls nuclear terrorism.
We can't be sure that the Russians won't hit these sites. We can't know what's in their heads. They're willing to target civilians and people's homes. We have to be ready for the worst-case scenario. So far, the psychological impact on our staff is the biggest issue we've faced. People who run a nuclear reactor need to get their sleep and stay calm.
It seems unlikely they'll be getting that sleep uninterrupted by air raid sirens anytime soon. 4 years into this war, the outside world has largely given up trying to impose a ceasefire around these nuclear sites on Russia. Even the slightest error could bring catastrophe to the region on a scale not seen since Chernobyl 40 years ago.
Abu Bilal al-Minuki, the second in command of ISIS globally, has been killed in an operation conducted by US and Nigerian forces in the northeast of the African country. This report tells you more.
U.S. President Donald Trump announced that a top ISIS commander was killed by U.S. and Nigerian forces. In a Truth Social post, Trump said that Abu Bilal al-Minuki, the second in command of ISIS globally, was eliminated. In a statement on X, Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu said early assessments confirmed that the ISIS commander was killed along with several of his lieutenants during a strike on his compound. This video, released by U.S. Africa Command on Saturday, claims to show a strike on ISIS fighters in Nigeria, including al-Minuki. Tinubu said Nigerian forces worked closely with the U.S. military in what he called a daring joint operation that dealt a heavy blow to the ranks of the Islamic State. Trump, who has previously accused Nigeria of failing to protect Christians from Islamist militants, thanked the Nigerian government for its partnership in the operation. Many Nigerians Reuters spoke to were in favor of it.
To me, I want more of such strikes, because we've been fighting this terrorism without fighting terrorism.
The terrorist issue has become something else. But if US can help us to eliminate all this thing, I see nothing bad there.
Nigeria's Borno state, where the strike was carried out, has endured an insurgency waged by Boko Haram and its splinter group, Islamic State West Africa Province, for 17 years. Thousands of people have been killed and some 2 million displaced.